April 1941. The North Atlantic was a graveyard, a vast expanse of icy water where the wind cut like a knife and the waves rose like mountains. The German Kriegsmarine had unleashed its U-boat fleet, and Allied shipping convoys were under constant threat. Every day, American and British merchant ships risked torpedo attacks, mines, and aerial bombardment as they transported vital supplies across the ocean. The survival of Europe and the success of the Allied war effort rested on the ability of these convoys to reach their destinations. Yet, the situation seemed dire. Convoys lost entire ships overnight, and morale among sailors was fragile. Families back home held their breath, reading casualty reports in newspapers while the ships themselves sailed on, a mix of steel, courage, and sheer determination. In the midst of this chaos, America was quietly preparing to change the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic. The Liberty Ship program, conceived as a rapid shipbuilding initiative, was underway. These vessels were designed to be simple, cost-effective, and mass-produced, a far cry from the elegant and meticulously crafted cargo ships of peacetime. Henry J. Kaiser's vision, which had revolutionized shipbuilding on the West Coast, now promised to deliver an unending stream of these essential lifelines across the ocean. The first Liberty ships were far from perfect. They were slow, unarmed, and often mocked by experienced mariners for their utilitarian design. Yet these ships carried the most precious cargo imaginable: food, weapons, vehicles, and fuel. Every crate of supplies represented the hopes of soldiers on distant battlefields, of families surviving under occupation, and of a nation still finding its footing in a global conflict. The sailors who manned them were ordinary men: fishermen, farmers, clerks, and factory workers, plucked from civilian life and thrust into a war they could barely comprehend. They faced not only the natural fury of the Atlantic, but also the invisible, lethal threat of German torpedoes. Meanwhile, the U-boat commanders, seasoned hunters of the sea, took note of these American convoys. At first, they saw the Liberty ships as easy prey, their slow speed and minimal armament a tempting target. Many laughed at the thought that these clunky vessels could make any significant difference. Yet the Allies had a secret weapon beyond steel and engines: the system. Convoys were escorted by destroyers, corvettes, and aircraft, coordinated by newly developed convoy tactics. Communication between ships, radar detection, and depth charge deployment gradually tilted the odds, forcing the U-boats into a deadly cat-and-mouse game. In late 1941, the first convoy of Liberty ships set out from New York, bound for England. Among the sailors was 24-year-old Jack Thompson, a former mechanic from Ohio who had never seen the ocean before enlistment. As the ship left port, families waved from the docks, unaware that their loved ones were embarking on a voyage that could end at the bottom of the Atlantic. Thompson, like many others, clutched his gear, listening to the engine hum and feeling the ship shudder under the weight of 10,000 tons of cargo. He didn't yet know that each day at sea would demand every ounce of courage he possessed. The Germans were ready. U-boat wolf packs, coordinated groups of submarines, patrolled the Atlantic, waiting for convoys to stumble into their hunting grounds. On the second night of the voyage, the first torpedo struck a nearby British freighter. Explosions echoed across the waves, lighting up the night sky. The Liberty ships held their course, zigzagging to avoid further attacks, while escort destroyers fired depth charges into the darkness. Sailors watched the water boil as the enemy tried to claim its prize. Jack Thompson, standing watch on the deck, realized that the ocean itself had become an enemy, a living, breathing threat, yet also a test of human ingenuity and endurance. At the same time, back in American shipyards, production never stopped. Where one Liberty ship sailed into danger, another rolled off the assembly lines, welded and fitted by hands that had only recently learned the trade. Thousands of workers, including women and minorities, labored in shifts around the clock, driven by the knowledge that each ship meant survival for soldiers and civilians alike. Prefabrication, simplified designs, and relentless organization allowed the U.S. to send more ships into the Atlantic than the Germans could sink, slowly turning the tide. By 1942, the scale of the Liberty ship effort was staggering. Ships once dismissed as fragile became lifelines. Convoy after convoy crossed the Atlantic, sometimes barely evading U-boats, sometimes trading blows. Yet the Allies learned quickly. Escort ships developed better sonar. Aerial patrols spotted submarines from above, and Liberty ships themselves were retrofitted with defensive armament. Every encounter hardened the sailors, sharpened the tactics, and eroded the confidence of German commanders who had once laughed at these tin cans. Stories of heroism spread quickly. Merchant mariners rescued survivors of sunk vessels, sometimes under fire. Sailors like Jack Thompson became living legends among their peers, embodying the spirit of ordinary Americans standing against a global threat. Each completed voyage, no matter how perilous, served as a message. The U.S. would not be intimidated. Liberty ships, once mocked for their simplicity, symbolized resilience, industrial might, and the unyielding determination of a nation under siege. The Battle of the Atlantic, once a nightmare for the Allies, began to tilt in favor of courage, strategy, and sheer human determination, a testament to what could be accomplished when a nation refused to surrender to fear. The following months saw the Atlantic become an endless chessboard of strategy, courage, and relentless danger. U-boat commanders, veterans of countless patrols, grew increasingly frustrated. The Liberty ships, once easy prey, began to move in organized convoys with destroyers and corvettes ready to respond to every torpedo launch. Sonar pings cut through the cold night waters, while depth charges detonated with thunderous echoes, shaking the ocean and the nerves of every sailor aboard. Jack Thompson, now several months into his first deployment, had transformed from a nervous mechanic into a seasoned mariner. He had seen the terror of ships exploding and men disappearing beneath waves. Yet he had also seen humanity at its finest. Captains risking their lives to save crews, sailors banding together in freezing water, and the indomitable will of men refusing to be cowed by the enemy. Each convoy brought a mix of hope and dread. Even as American industrial might ensured a steady stream of new ships, the crews faced every possible danger: storms, mechanical failures, and the ever-present threat of German torpedoes. In June 1942, a convoy of 20 Liberty ships set sail from New York, bound for Liverpool. Among them was the SS Samuel Gompers, a vessel loaded with tanks, jeeps, ammunition, and crucial food supplies. The crew, a mix of men from factories, farms, and small towns, knew that German submarines lurked in the shadows, ready to strike. As night fell on the first day, radar operators aboard the escorting destroyers detected a U-boat shadowing the convoy. The subtle movement of waves betrayed its position, and the crew readied themselves for the inevitable confrontation. The Germans launched a series of torpedoes. One struck the hull of a nearby freighter, tearing it apart. Explosions sent debris flying into the air, and flames illuminated the night. The Liberty ships, despite their unarmed reputation, maneuvered with surprising agility. Armed with deck guns and machine guns, they fought back, coordinating with the destroyers to drive the U-boats away. Jack Thompson, manning a lookout post, watched the unfolding chaos with a mixture of fear and awe. The ocean seemed alive with fire, smoke, and steel, a theater where survival depended on courage, quick thinking, and the unwavering trust between sailors. The American shipyards had prepared these vessels for exactly this kind of encounter. Initially, critics mocked the Liberty ships for their speed and simplicity. Yet in battle, these same qualities became advantages. Their standardized construction allowed rapid repairs, while crews trained in efficiency could manage emergency responses faster than any traditional naval vessel. Onboard systems were simple but reliable, designed to function under the harshest conditions. Every Liberty ship, however ordinary in appearance, represented months of careful planning, industrial genius, and the spirit of a nation determined not to falter. By mid-1942, the Battle of the Atlantic had reached a critical point. The Germans were sinking ships at a pace that threatened to starve Britain, yet America's ability to replace them grew stronger by the day. Liberty ships became the backbone of the Allied supply chain, carrying the weapons, vehicles, and food that would fuel offensives in North Africa, Europe, and beyond. For sailors like Jack Thompson, each successful voyage reinforced a profound truth. Ordinary vessels, manned by ordinary Americans, could achieve extraordinary feats. One fateful convoy, departing Halifax in late July, would demonstrate this like never before. Intelligence had revealed a concentration of U-boats in the mid-Atlantic, and the convoy was ordered to maintain strict radio silence while navigating through treacherous waters. As darkness fell on the first day, radar operators aboard the escorting destroyers detected a U-boat shadowing the convoy. The subtle movement of waves betrayed its position, and the crew readied themselves for the inevitable confrontation. The Germans launched a series of torpedoes. One struck the hull of a nearby freighter, tearing it apart. Explosions sent debris flying into the air, and flames illuminated the night. The Liberty ships, despite their unarmed reputation, maneuvered with surprising agility. Armed with deck guns and machine guns, they fought back, coordinating with the destroyers to drive the U-boats away. Jack Thompson, manning a lookout post, watched the unfolding chaos with a mixture of fear and awe. The ocean seemed alive with fire, smoke, and steel, a theater where survival depended on courage, quick thinking, and the unwavering trust between sailors. The Liberty ships were not just cargo ships anymore. They represented a symbol of American determination, a floating testament to the nation's industrial and human strength. Back at home, the war effort accelerated. American shipyards churned out new Liberty ships faster than the Germans could sink them. Men and women, from assembly line workers to welders, labored tirelessly, producing vessels that were both functional and reliable. Prefabrication techniques, first tested under peacetime conditions, now saved lives across the Atlantic. The Industrial Revolution of the shipyards became a weapon of war, proving that production, organization, and ingenuity could rival even the most experienced U-boat commanders. By late 1942, the cumulative effect of American shipbuilding and tactical innovation was undeniable. U-boat losses increased, morale among German crews faltered, and the once dreaded Atlantic became a contested space rather than an outright hunting ground. Liberty ships carried tanks, jeeps, ammunition, and food to beleaguered soldiers and civilians, maintaining the lifeline that Britain desperately needed. Each successful voyage reinforced the growing legend of these vessels, transforming them from mocked tin cans into icons of resilience and ingenuity. Stories of heroism continued to emerge. Merchant mariners who braved the torpedoes, crew members who repaired damage under fire, and sailors who rescued fellow men from icy waters became legends in their own time. Jack Thompson, now an experienced sailor, saw firsthand how courage, training, and teamwork could turn ordinary men into heroes capable of defying impossible odds. The Liberty ships, simple and standardized, had become powerful symbols not only of American industrial might, but also of the human spirit's capacity to endure.
The spring of 1943 brought a renewed intensity to the Atlantic, as U-boat wolf packs grew bolder, targeting ever larger convoys. Intelligence reports warned of coordinated German attacks, yet the Americans were ready. Liberty ships, once viewed as vulnerable cargo vessels, had become the backbone of the Allied supply chain. Their crews, hardened by months of crossing the treacherous waters, knew the stakes. Every ship that survived meant food, weapons, and hope for the soldiers and civilians waiting across the ocean. Jack Thompson, now a veteran mariner, was assigned to the SS Patrick Henry, a Liberty ship carrying artillery and vehicles for the North African campaign. The crew had endured countless nights of tension, listening for the telltale sounds of a U-boat's approach, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. Every movement of the sea could signal a threat, Every shadow could be a predator waiting to strike. The Atlantic was no longer just water. It was a battlefield, alive with peril. As the convoy left the port of New York, morale was high despite the ever-present danger. Sailors shared stories of previous engagements, tales of daring maneuvers, and moments of sheer luck that had spared their lives. But there was little room for complacency. The Germans had learned from past failures, adjusting tactics and coordinating attacks to maximize destruction. The Liberty ship's deck guns, once seen as modest defenses, were now critical tools for survival. Every crew member was trained to operate them under pressure, to aim and fire with precision even as explosions rocked the vessel. 3 nights into the voyage, radar operators aboard the escorting destroyers detected movement on the horizon. U-boats, cunning and relentless, had formed a shadowy blockade, determined to intercept the convoy. Depth charges rumbled beneath the waves as destroyers maneuvered to confront the threat. The Liberty ships zigzagged, crew members gripping railings, eyes scanning the darkness. A torpedo struck a nearby freighter, engulfing it in flames, yet the spring of 1943 brought a renewed intensity to the Atlantic as U-boat wolf packs grew bolder, targeting ever larger convoys. Intelligence reports warned of coordinated German attacks, yet the Americans were ready. Liberty ships, once viewed as vulnerable cargo vessels, had become the backbone of the Allied supply chain. Their crews, hardened by months of crossing the treacherous waters, knew the stakes. Every ship that survived meant food, weapons, and hope for the soldiers and civilians waiting across the ocean. Jack Thompson, now a veteran mariner, was assigned to the SS Patrick Henry, a Liberty ship carrying artillery and vehicles for the North African campaign. The crew had endured countless nights of tension, listening for the telltale sounds of a U-boat's approach, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. Every movement of the sea could signal a threat. Every shadow could be a predator waiting to strike. The Atlantic was no longer just water. It was a battlefield, alive with peril. As the convoy left the port of New York, morale was high despite the ever-present danger. Sailors shared stories of previous engagements, tales of daring maneuvers, and moments of sheer luck that had spared their lives. But there was little room for complacency. The Germans had learned from past failures, adjusting tactics and coordinating attacks to maximize destruction. The Liberty ship's deck guns, once seen as modest defenses, were now critical tools for survival. Every crew member was trained to operate them under pressure, to aim and fire with precision even as explosions rocked the vessel. 3 nights into the voyage, radar operators aboard the escorting destroyers detected movement on the horizon. U-boats, cunning and relentless, had formed a shadowy blockade, determined to intercept the convoy. Depth charges rumbled beneath the waves as destroyers maneuvered to confront the threat. The Patrick Henry zigzagged, crew members gripping railings, eyes scanning the darkness. A torpedo struck a nearby freighter, engulfing it in flames, yet the convoy held its formation. Coordination, training, and sheer willpower allowed them to survive. Jack Thompson manned the lookout post, watching as flares illuminated the night. The sky, filled with smoke and fire, revealed the enormity of the confrontation. Liberty ships, despite being cargo vessels, fought with surprising effectiveness. They absorbed impacts, returned fire, and adjusted course with agility that surprised even the most experienced U-boat commanders. The ocean became a theater of human courage and technological ingenuity, where survival depended on quick thinking, cooperation, and unwavering resolve. In one critical moment, the Patrick Henry's crew spotted a U-boat surfacing to launch torpedoes. The deck gun opened fire, shells splashing around the submarine, forcing it to dive again. The destroyers counterattacked, dropping depth charges with precision, sending shockwaves through the water. Sailors clung to hope, adrenaline coursing through their veins as explosions illuminated the dark Atlantic night sky. Each successful defensive action reinforced the growing legend of the Liberty ships, proving that even simple vessels, manned by ordinary Americans, could achieve extraordinary feats. Back on land, the impact of Liberty ship production was undeniable. American shipyards, operating around the clock, churned out new vessels at an unprecedented rate. Prefabricated sections, standardized construction techniques, and efficient labor allowed the United States to replace losses almost as quickly as they occurred. Women and men, from welders to engineers, contributed to a national effort that transformed industrial capacity into a weapon of war. The simple steel hulls of the Liberty ships became symbols of resilience, determination, and national pride. By mid-1943, the cumulative effect of these efforts was clear. German U-boat attacks were increasingly thwarted. Convoys reached Europe with vital supplies, and morale among the Allied forces soared. Every Liberty ship that arrived safely represented not just cargo, but a triumph of human spirit and industrial ingenuity. Jack Thompson, reflecting on his experiences, realized that these vessels were more than floating supply lines. They were lifelines of hope and symbols of American ingenuity, endurance, and courage. One particularly harrowing engagement occurred in July 1943, when a convoy of 30 ships faced a concentrated U-boat assault in the mid-Atlantic. The Germans, employing advanced tactics and coordination, struck swiftly, sinking 2 freighters before the convoy could react. The Liberty ships, however, were prepared. Crews manned their guns, following drill after drill, while destroyers engaged in aggressive counterattacks. Explosions and fire illuminated the night sky, turning the ocean into a chaotic battlefield. Jack Thompson, drenched in sea swatter and adrenaline, fought alongside his comrades, witnessing firsthand how ordinary Americans could stand against the mightiest of adversaries. In the aftermath of the battle, survivors of damaged vessels were rescued, and the convoy continued its journey. Every Liberty ship that reached Europe carried not just supplies, but stories of bravery, endurance, and ingenuity. Crew members shared their experiences, reinforcing a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose that transcended fear and fatigue. These men, ordinary Americans from small towns and cities, had become legends, their actions ensuring that the lifeline across the Atlantic remained unbroken. The strategic impact of Liberty ships extended beyond individual convoys. Their ability to maintain supply lines allowed the Allies to launch major operations, including the North African and Italian campaigns. Tanks, ammunition, and food reached the front lines, enabling soldiers to fight effectively and sustained prolonged engagements. The simple cargo vessels, once underestimated, had become indispensable to the war effort, proving that industrial power, combined with human courage, could alter the course of history. Technological innovation played a key role in the success of the Liberty ships. Radar, sonar, and improved communication systems enhanced convoy coordination, while anti-submarine tactics evolved in response to German strategies. Crews trained rigorously, ensuring they could respond to threats quickly and effectively. Even the design of the ships, optimized for speed of construction and versatility, contributed to their effectiveness in battle. Every element, from hull design to crew training, reflected a deliberate effort to create vessels capable of surviving and thriving in the harshest conditions. By late 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic had shifted decisively in favor of the Allies. U-boat losses mounted, German morale faltered, and the once feared wolf packs found themselves increasingly unable to disrupt vital supply lines. Liberty ships, far from being the simple cargo vessels once mocked, had become a symbol of American resilience, ingenuity, and determination. Every successful voyage reinforced the growing legend, inspiring both sailors at sea and citizens on the home front. Jack Thompson, now a seasoned veteran, reflected on his journey. From a nervous young man on his first voyage to a confident sailor facing repeated attacks, he had witnessed the transformative power of courage, training, and unity. The Liberty ships, simple yet resilient, had carried the weight of a nation's hopes across the ocean, proving that ordinary Americans, armed with determination and ingenuity, could achieve the extraordinary. As the convoy reached the safety of European ports, battered but largely intact, the significance of the liberty.
As 1944 approached, the Atlantic remained a contested theater, but the tide had undeniably shifted. German U-boats, once the scourge of Allied shipping, now faced a combination of technological advancements, refined tactics, and the unyielding resilience of Liberty ship crews. Radar-equipped destroyers, long-range patrol aircraft, and improved convoy coordination created a network that made surprise attacks increasingly rare. Yet danger never fully disappeared. Every voyage across the open sea demanded vigilance, courage, and a steady hand. Jack Thompson, having survived multiple crossings, now led a crew on the SS John Adams, another Liberty ship carrying vital supplies for the impending invasion of Normandy. The stakes had never been higher. Tanks, artillery, and ammunition awaited the soldiers preparing for D-Day, and the successful delivery of these materials was critical to the entire Allied strategy. For Thompson and his crew, the mission was clear: reach Europe safely, no matter the obstacles. Every wave, every shadow, and every distant radar blip could mean the difference between life and death. As the convoy sailed through the North Atlantic, intelligence reports warned of concentrated U-boat activity. The Germans, aware of the massive buildup of Allied forces in Britain, sought to disrupt supply lines and delay the invasion. But the Liberty ships, once dismissed as fragile and defenseless, were now battle-tested and efficient. Their crews had honed skills that allowed them to respond swiftly to threats, coordinate with escorting destroyers, and defend their cargo with surprising effectiveness. A sudden alert rang through the convoy. Radar picked up multiple contacts, confirming that a wolf pack had positioned itself along their route. Depth charges exploded in the distance as destroyers maneuvered aggressively to intercept. The ocean became a stage for courage and chaos, with Liberty ships zigzagging through the water, deck guns firing at shadowy shapes, and crew members shouting commands over the roar of engines and crashing waves. Every sailor knew that the success of the mission depended on calm nerves, quick decisions, and relentless teamwork. The SS John Adams encountered a U-boat attempting a stealth attack from beneath the waves. Jack Thompson, trained through months of experience, coordinated with the gun crew to unleash a precise counterattack. Shells splashed around the submarine, forcing it to retreat, while destroyers delivered devastating depth charges that shook the water and sent shockwaves through the hull. In that moment, the simple Liberty ship demonstrated its hidden strength, a vessel of steel and courage that defied expectations. News from other convoys mirrored Thompson's experience. Liberty ships across the Atlantic were holding their ground, disrupting U-boat operations and ensuring the steady flow of supplies. Engineers, shipbuilders, and dock workers on the American home front could see the tangible results of their labor. Each ship that survived became a testament to their dedication and ingenuity. The United States, through industrial might and human determination, had created vessels capable of turning the tide of naval warfare. The lessons learned from earlier battles were evident. Convoys now traveled in tighter formations. Escorts coordinated seamlessly, and crew members were better trained than ever before. Liberty ships, previously underestimated, had become a symbol of adaptability and endurance. They proved that even vessels designed for speed and efficiency could withstand combat conditions, providing critical support to soldiers on the front lines and sustaining the broader war effort. By mid-1944, the strategic importance of Liberty ships could not be overstated. They delivered the supplies that enabled Operation Overlord, ensuring that Allied forces were well equipped for the Normandy invasion. Tanks, trucks, ammunition, and food arrived precisely when needed, allowing soldiers to establish beachheads and advance into occupied Europe.
The success of these operations underscored the essential role of logistics and maritime resilience in modern warfare. Liberty ships, far from passive transporters, had become active participants in shaping history. Jack Thompson's final voyage of 1944 exemplified this reality. Facing rough seas, mechanical failures, and the ever-present threat of enemy submarines, his crew maintained focus and composure. The deck guns fired relentlessly when U-boat contacts were detected, while destroyers patrolled with precision. Each successful maneuver, each evasion, and every counterattack reinforced the growing legend of the Liberty ships. Ordinary men operating ordinary vessels with extraordinary skill had become heroes of the Atlantic. The psychological impact on German U-boat crews was significant. Reports described frustration and demoralization as increasingly sophisticated Allied convoys eluded attacks. The wolf packs that once ruled the Atlantic found themselves vulnerable, outmatched, and outmaneuvered. Liberty ships, the embodiment of American industrial power and human perseverance, had turned the ocean into a gauntlet the Germans could no longer dominate. Every ship that reached port intact was a blow to morale and a testament to the growing supremacy of the Allies. The final months of the Atlantic campaign showcased the culmination of experience, innovation, and determination. Convoys reached Europe with unprecedented success rates, minimizing losses and maximizing impact. Liberty ships continued to transport vital supplies for the liberation of France, the push into Germany, and the ultimate defeat of Nazi forces. The combined efforts of sailors like Jack Thompson, engineers, shipbuilders, and supporting personnel had reshaped the naval landscape, proving that resilience, innovation, and courage could overcome even the most formidable adversaries. In reflecting on these events, it becomes clear that Liberty ships were more than cargo vessels. They were lifelines connecting continents, symbols of national determination, and instruments of strategic dominance. They carried not only food, weapons, and vehicles, but also hope, morale, and the tangible presence of a nation committed to victory. Jack Thompson, standing on the deck as Europe appeared on the horizon, understood the full significance of his service. He and his crew had contributed to a war effort that reached far beyond individual battles, shaping the course of history itself. The legacy of Liberty ships and their crews endured long after the final shot was fired in Europe. Museums, historical records, and veterans' accounts preserved their stories, ensuring that future generations understood the critical role they played. These ships, once dismissed as simple cargo carriers, had become icons of resilience, innovation, and national pride. Every rivet, every hull, and every crew member reflected the extraordinary capacity of ordinary Americans to rise to unprecedented challenges. Jack Thompson returned home after the war, greeted by families and communities that had supported the war effort. The pride in what had been accomplished was palpable. Liberty ships had delivered more than supplies. They had carried the collective determination of a nation, the hopes of soldiers and civilians alike, and the tangible evidence that ordinary people, united by purpose, could achieve the extraordinary. The Atlantic, once a theater of fear and uncertainty, had become a testament to courage, innovation, and the unbreakable spirit of America. In the end, the story of the Liberty ships is a story of transformation. From humble beginnings as simple cargo vessels to heroes of the Atlantic, they embodied the essence of American determination. Men like Jack Thompson proved that ordinary individuals, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, could rise to meet history's greatest challenges. Their courage, innovation, and resilience turned steel and rivets into instruments of victory, shaping the outcome of World War II and leaving an enduring legacy that would be remembered for generations to come.